Dissatisfaction with Tehran's policies led farmers in Isfahan to turn their backs on the preacher at Friday prayers. Since then, it has become one of the prominent protest platforms. Since January 2018, protests against the current regime have been held throughout Iran. Now, subsequent to the farmers' demonstration in Isfahan, Iran's third largest city, protests have occurred in Ahwaz, the Khuzestan province's capital, and in Hormozgan's provincial capital, Bandar Abbas. Then, on Friday the 20th of April, there was a further protest in the southwestern Iranian city of Khazerun. Following the farmers' lead, many Iranians have demonstrated their dissent by raising local and national issues during the observance of Friday prayers. Many of the protesters have been chanting radical slogans critical of the Islamic Republic's establishment. There were hundreds of protesters at Khazerun's Friday prayers. The ceremony was completely overwhelmed by the noise and chaos they created. Both male and female protesters chanted an anti-government slogan, "Our enemy is right here. The state lies by saying it is America." And they shouted, indicating by pointing at state officials, "We will kill whoever commits treason." What are the implications of this new Friday prayers protest? Since the creation of Iran's Islamic Republic, the Friday prayer ceremony has been the cornerstone of its support, a weekly gathering of the regime's staunchest supporters. In each of Iran's provinces, the Friday prayer leader is a direct appointee of the Republic's supreme leader and is viewed as his direct representative. He will also lead Friday prayers in the provincial capital. In lesser towns and cities throughout Iran, the leader of Friday prayers is appointed by the supreme leader's provincial representative, but they too directly represent the supreme leader. The Friday prayer leaders are the most powerful authority figures in their region. They have more power and influence than the governors and governor-generals appointed by the executive branches of government. The Friday prayer ceremony is under the direct protection of Iran's security forces. Disorder or disruption of the prayer process would involve officialdom, and perpetrators are liable to prosecution and severe punishment. This clash with the country's ultimate authority demonstrates the significance of feeling evident in the protesters. To disrupt the prayers and sermons of the supreme leader's personal representative shows how important these protests are and how unhappy and desperate the people must be. Recent Friday prayer protests have seen a new twist in their boldness. As with the January protests, people are openly attacking the government's failures in a far more direct manner than previously. The Khazerun protests were in opposition to plans to change the city boundary. This would place some historically important parts of Khazerun outside the city. The demonstrators accused local state officials of treachery, believing they were either responsible for the plans or indifferent to the feelings of the local people. On March the 16th, protests at Isfahan's Friday prayers made the news. Local farmers, angry with the poor management of water resources during the current drought, made a radical move. They sat close to the podium, and in unison they stood and turned their backs to the Friday prayers preacher in an expression of dissatisfaction. Their chant, "Turning our backs to the enemy, our faces to the motherland." The implication, the leader's representative, therefore the supreme leader, is the enemy. A couple of weeks later, Isfahan's Friday prayers preacher criticised the farmers' protest and accused them of sedition and disruption. That same day, video footage showed some Isfahan women in black chador chanting, "Our enemy is right here. State officials lie by saying it is America." The same slogan protesters chanted weeks later at Khazerun's Friday prayers. In Ahwaz on the 23rd of February, the protest was about workers not being paid. One of their more ironic slogans ran, "Death to workers, long live oppressors." A week later, still unpaid, they planned a repeat protest, but the police barred their entry. Their chant this time, "Friday prayers beware, we are workers, not thugs." Will the protests bring change? Despite the recent disruptions, protests at Friday prayers are not unique. It has happened before. However, before, protests have always been low-key. In May 2017, workers protested at Bandar Abbas Friday prayers. The preacher told the workers their problem was nothing to do with him, and though unhappy, the workers left without further trouble. The more recent demonstrations appear to be more hard-edged and militant. Observers predict a new, greater energy in the protest and the protesters since the beginning of 2018. In the January protests, according to one of Ayatollah Khamenei's spokesmen, some 60 offices of the leader's representative came under attack. It seems, finally, with these Friday prayers protests, that people are laying the blame for their hard lives and deprivation where it belongs, at the door of the Supreme Leader and his representatives.